everyone. I'm Melissa McAllister.
And I'm Dr. Lauren Fitzgerald, and you're listening to The Made Fitz Show.
So for years, we have dedicated ourselves to giving others the tools to feel their absolute best through the power of health, fitness, and nutrition coaching, as well as both Western and functional medicine.
Each week on The Made Fitz Show, we're going to talk about everything from health trends, nutrition, topics like HRT and medical weight loss, self-care, wellness hacks, different workouts, fasting, our favorite recipes, and more.
We promise that The Made Fitz Show will be educational, entertaining, but most importantly, worth listening to each week. Now, with small, dedicated changes, you can live a healthier, more heart-filled life. We're excited to show you it's possible with the right strategies that are simple to adopt.
We are a certified nutritionist and a board-certified medical doctor who have a combination of over 50 years in the health and fitness world and are passionate about empowering others to take the leap and live their healthiest, happiest lives by using the tools we give in this podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Melissa Made Show. So I've been doing this show now for over 2 years. And obviously, I talk a lot about my passions. And I kind of started to see this, similarity when it comes to these podcasts a lot. And, you know, Taylor's 28 in July and Tanner's 30 in January. And so my kids have been out of the house for a long time. However, I just spent a whole long weekend working with a lot of my clients, having our one-on-one calls. And I can't tell you the amount of times that I'm working with moms and they're telling me how they want to lose weight, they want to eat healthy, but then there's the kids. And I do remember that. And I actually I would love to get some advice from our guest today, but I tell myself I would feed my kids so differently today with what I know versus what I did when they were young and I was a very young parent. I mean, I had Tanner at 20 and Taylor at 22, but how much I think I would feed them differently today. But then again, I have a cat and I try to feed this cat healthy food, but every time she cries for a treat, I give it to her. I give in. And she doesn't need that many treats. So that being said, I have a phenomenal guest today that I think is going to resonate with so many of my clients. And not only that, but all of you wonderful listeners that are parents out there or grandparents thinking about having children. So I'm going to give him a great little introduction. We're going to get started. But this is the whole purpose of me spewing all that out is I think this is going to be a little bit different in such a good way. This is such a fun, important topic that I have so many conversations with people one-on-one, but we haven't had on this podcast yet. So I'm very excited. So let me give him an introduction. Today on our podcast, we have Jason Levee, Master of Science, Registered Dietitian, Certified Dietitian Nutritionist, and the founder of Whole Family Health. Now, as a dad of 3 very young kids, Jason is passionate about helping families prioritize nutrition, even with busy lifestyles. He supports families through mealtime struggles like pickiness, parental doubt, misinformation, power struggles, meal skipping, and meal planning. Jason is dedicated to reducing mealtime stress and fostering connection at the dinner table, which I freaking love. He customizes his approach to meet families where they are and to guide them step by step to their goals, believing in sustainable solutions for everyone. Jason also helps busy parents achieve their health goals and build healthy relationships with food, setting a positive example for their whole family. Doesn't that sound fun? All right, Jason, welcome to the podcast. It's so nice to have you here today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, Melissa. I'm excited to be here. Excited to talk to your audience.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So I would love to know just kind of what got you started in this career path. I think you have such a unique and great niche that is becoming more and more needed. And I certainly, even in the health space that I'm in, I don't hear of people specializing in this area as much. So can you just kind of walk us through that got you here today to this career path that you're in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a pretty non-traditional career path. I graduated college in 2008 and was an economics major. And followed a pretty well-worn path from econ major, working straight into financial services. So I worked in wealth management and investment banking for a bunch of years. And while I was working in those fields, I was good at the job, but I didn't really enjoy it. It just wasn't really for me. And I kept coming back to conversations about nutrition while I was working, but I never really thought anything of it. Never really saw a career in it or anything. It was just kind of this passion, and I was like off on the side. And eventually, I met my wife, and I would come in from work, and every day she'd be like, "What's going on? Like, what's going on with you?" And we would talk about it, and she's like, we were talking about having kids. This is before we had our older son. And she's like, "You've got to figure out something that you want to do that's going to make you feel really, really good every day. Or not just something you're good at, but something that you really, really love and lights you up every single day." And she's like, "By the way, yeah, she's the brains of the operation here. It's really all the best parts of the operation." But we were talking, and she's like, "By the way, you always come back to nutrition." And I had a pretty long weight loss battle myself when I was a kid. I learned about nutrition a little bit during college and lost a bunch of weight, and like my confidence shot up. All of health metrics went up, or I guess down actually, because of like cholesterol and things like that. But I learned a lot through that struggle, and it was kind of like an ongoing battle throughout my childhood and into my young adulthood. But again, I never really saw a career in it. And so as we were talking more and more, she's like, "You should talk to some of our friends that are dietitians, see if that's the path you want to go down." So I talked to them, fell in love, went back to school, like completely started over. And when I first started school, I was like, I'm going to be a weight loss dietitian. Like, that is what I care about. That's my story. And I think that's like, there's such a struggle in this country where we go on a long diet talking about the food industry, but we are not really set up for success in terms of our overall health, the way that our food system is structured. And so as a result, there's a lot of need for weight loss and all those. That all changed when I had my first child. So we had our son, and I was, starting grad school at this point, and I saw how much information and misinformation there is out there about feeding kids, starting from breastfeeding or bottle feeding, all the way through young adulthood and into adulthood. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, why is this so confusing? Like, I'm at this point a master's student in nutrition. Like, why can't I make sense of this based on what I'm seeing, like in the world, not what I'm seeing in the classroom? And I was like, oh, this is, I think, what I need to do, right? Like, I think I need to like work on this and work with families. You live in New York City, people overprogram themselves and overprogram their kids basically from the time before they're born. And all the parents are really busy, but they also have these ideas in their heads about how they want to feed their kids, and they want everyone to eat in a healthy way, and they also want to live healthier lives. And I kind of saw this light, and I was like, I don't think anyone else really does this, and I kind of think I can do it. And so I dedicated the rest of my training to really focusing on, supporting the whole family unit. And so I went through all my training, finished all that, and worked at a larger dietetic practice for a little over a year. And then a couple of years ago, I started my own company, Whole Family Health. And now I work primarily with families or with busy parents. And it's all about, how do we make it work for everybody in the family? How do we set goals that are achievable, but directionally, moving the way that you want to go? And how do we set you on a long-term path to have a good relationship, to feel really good about what you are eating, what you're feeding your kids, the amount of time that you're spending, dedicated to prepping meals or planning meals or, eating, how often you guys all eat, talking about all these different things. And really, like you said in the intro, like taking the stress out of mealtime and bringing back the dinner table as a place where you can just kind of sit there with your kids, with your family, and talk about the day or catch up on whatever else is going on in your lives. So you can bring back that connection, because our time is precious, and we want to spend it with doing the things we want to do with the people we want to do, and have as much time as we can. So the more we're able to take the stress away from those connection points and make them a little bit easier, kind of the better served we are. So I love it. It's the best part of my day outside of my family time is working with people and helping them kind of achieve what they thought was previously unachievable, or feel just a little bit better each day. And then over the course of 6 months, seeing what changes and really seeing what they can hold on to years later. It's amazing.
Which was going to be my next question was, what do you love about it? But you just answered that. I think that's fabulous. It's one thing to be able to help the individual, but to help a whole family unit is still pretty good. You touched on, I believe you said weight loss as an adolescent. Just real fast, can you share a little bit about that? That's just not something that you don't hear very many stories like that.
Yeah. So growing up, I always thought I was like doing the right things to kind of stay healthy. I played a lot of sports, was like a pretty average athlete, but like I really enjoyed sports, still love sports to this day. Um, but what I ate at home was probably like pretty typical of like a kid growing up in the 80s and 90s. And, you know, a lot of packaged foods and, you know, there was the fat free craze.
Oh yeah.
Or like healthy choice or like, you know, all this branding that was geared towards, well, fat is the enemy and we have to avoid fat. And that's what's messaged to you, not just like on the box, but also, you know, a lot of the advertising that you're seeing and the way that food is talked about, whether it's in your home or other places. And so I tended toward overeating pretty often and I gained weight and, you know, I never was able to really lose it until I took out. And, you know, I wouldn't say it was like a home environment type of thing. It was more just I, you know, I would eat a lot and I would eat like all the time. Probably as a coping mechanism for something that I don't really know. Probably something on top of my therapist at some point. But it was, you know, it became this battle where, you know, as it got worse, as my weight increased, it got harder and harder. And, you know, my freshman year of college, you know, people talk about the freshman 15, gaining 15 pounds. I think I gained like 30 pounds that freshman year. And I'm only 5'6" and I weighed about 230 pounds. And it was not like a very strong 230 pounds packet. So when I got home after that year, I stepped on the scale and I had this like crazy realization. I was like, what are you doing? Like, you've got to get a handle on this. And I sat down with my parents, like the first week I was home right before I started my job for the summer. And I was like, I really need to make some changes. Like, will you help? I think I know what I need to do, but will you help? Like, of course, like we did. So together, you know, I think my brother was out of the house, right? So it's just the three of us home that summer. And we started talking about like, what could meals look like? What role could I play in it? Because I was moving from the dorms also into an apartment that year. So the first year, like not at home and not in the dorms. Right. So I'd always cooked, but I learned like much healthier cooking techniques over that summer, like using less oil and sauteing rather than like frying or like baking or like roasting rather than things like that. So, you know, over the summer, I started drinking more water. I was keeping a more regular schedule. I wasn't even working out that much this summer and I lost a tremendous amount of weight by 19-year-old boy standards. Really had the metabolism on my side. And then I kind of kept it going for the next several years, really to this day. Where I was able to adopt this pattern of, okay, like let's prioritize the vegetables, and make sure you're eating whole grains and make sure you're getting, you know, eating sufficient amount of lean protein and healthy fats. And, you know, I knew a little bit of information, but I didn't know a ton. I didn't know nearly what I know now, but I kind of fell into like this kind of lucky way of following, you know, a lot of the dietary advice that I offer folks now in terms of the food groups to prioritize. And, you know, as my weight came down, my confidence swung. And it was just like this complete like swinging basically of, you know, I was 5'6", 230 pounds, like felt awful about myself and would make any excuse in the book to, okay, like you just took charge of something that you've been fighting for, I don't know, a decade, maybe even a little bit longer at that point. And like getting teased as a kid, getting called every name in the book on the playground, like those types of things. And now I finally took charge of it and I was getting the changes I wanted. I was getting the results I wanted and my confidence was up and I was just feeling much better about myself. I started doing a lot better in school. I started doing a lot better in every aspect of my life. And I can't attribute it all to like, oh, it was because I was overweight. That's why I was not doing well. It was confidence. It was like, I lacked self-confidence. Yeah. I had like, there was never like, if I get down to, I don't know, 165 pounds, like I'll feel a certain way. Because like 165 can look a lot of different ways. But it was more like, okay, like as you start to feel better about what you see in the mirror or like where your clothes are fitting, you know, you're going to start to feel better about everything else also. So it was like this huge confidence boost for me. And it made me feel just, you know, day in, day out, a lot more able to take on basically any challenge. Like if I can do that, I can pretty much do anything.
Yeah, 100%. So do you find in the families that you work with, same thing with the kid? Are you seeing that with the children as well? If you worked with families for a long time, then these children are able to get off excess weight that they probably get teased at school for that. Getting that off, you see that confidence with the kids as well?
Yeah. So when I'm working with families where there's weight concerns, I've worked kind of across the entire spectrum of my kid is severely underweight, like borderline failure to thrive, all the way through my kid is at risk for type 2 diabetes and they're 9 years old.
Wow.
And they have the A1C of someone who is, 65 years old and they're probably going to get diagnosed in the next 6 months type of situation. And they're 9 years old. And so they already have all these specialists and they have a doctor that they would see for diabetes. They have a doctor that they would see for heart disease. Like they're seeing a cardiologist. And sometimes it's genetics that certainly play a role, but some of it's environment as well. And the choices that they're making individually. So it's, I work with families across the board and we help to figure out like what's going on, with your individual child in a non-judgmental way. Because you want to build confidence in a kid and in the parents as well. And make sure that the way that they're talking about it isn't in a way that's like going to give their kid something that they're more worried about or something that they're going to hide from their parent. And it's, I've seen tremendous changes where, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids will really assert themselves and, find their confidence and say like, this is what I like, this is what I don't. And like, that's a good thing when your kid has that confidence to assert themselves in a respectful way and, not being nasty about it, but they're saying like, this is what I want to do. And like, this is how I want to feel. And, a lot of it comes from education. I think it's the biggest piece for both the parents and the kid. And when I talk to a whole family, I will talk to if I'm talking to just the parents, speak in a very specific way. And if I'm talking to the kids, I'll talk in a much more age appropriate way. I'm very lucky. My wife is an educator. So I hear the way that she talks to parents and families as well, parents and kids as well. And having 3 little kids also help. I can talk to a 5-year-old. So you find the ways to connect with kids and make it meaningful to them. So whether it's a kid who wants to, I'm thinking of one kid in particular I worked with in the past, who really wanted to make the basketball team, but couldn't keep up during tryouts, couldn't run up and down the floor, and got cut from the team really early on one year. And then over the course of a year, we really, really worked on his relationship with food and instead of using food as a coping mechanism, using food as just food. Like it's just food. And it can play a coping role, but it can't be the only coping mechanism. It can't be the only support. And so how do we go from, in his case, drinking close to a gallon of milk every day to, if you like milk, great, go ahead and drink it, but let's not drink a gallon. Let's drink mostly water, and finding other little changes that we can make and realizing, look, you're growing still. We don't want you to lose weight super, super fast, but also like you are putting yourself at risk for some things down the road. And so let's take that into account. But when I'm talking to the kid, I focus on, look, like you want to make the basketball team. Let's talk about basketball. Let's talk about how you can use food as something that's going to help you on the court. So what do we need to eat in order for you to be able to run a little bit faster or, to feel better while you're playing, games are whatever they are. I think there's 40 minutes for kids that age. Like how are you able to run up and down the court for that long and keep up and jump a little bit higher, run a little bit faster, dribble a little more confidently, whatever it is. So finding that connection point is huge. So yeah, I think it's, working with kids, it's fun sometimes. Most of the time, I would say.
Absolutely. I'm sure you've hit all of the spectrums. Is there anything, if parents come to you and it's mostly, they're coming to you mostly because of the child or the children, is there anything that the very first thing that you do, or is it a very individual case? Or do kind of across the board, you're like, okay, this is usually the first thing that we will start working on versus I can't answer that because every child or every household is completely different.
Well, the first thing I always do is listen. I always listen. I want to understand where they're coming from. But yeah, it is entirely individualized. There are certain things that I'm kind of looking out for depending on what what they say initially, why they're coming in. If it's a family, for example, with young kids and there's a lot of power struggles at the table or a lot of pickiness from one of their kids, we start to focus mostly on the environment around the table. Like, are there a lot of distractions? Is this your only time together? Is this the only time your kid ever has any say in it? And is that where they're exerting their power because they have some choice and you're not going to force feed, or at least I hope you're not force feed your kid. And so, they're finally getting a place to exercise some free will because they're not given choice anywhere else in their day. Like their day is so prescribed of exactly how it's going to go. So we really focus in on those types of things in order to give kids more decision making So that way, not every meal needs to be a fight. Right. And that way, you can start to give your kids choices before the meal. So that way, when they sit down at the table, they know there's at least one thing they're going to eat, and that's okay. Right. And taking, helping parents to zoom out from the one meal and instead focus on, okay, what did the week look like? What did the month look like? Because one meal is very, very rarely make or break. It's usually, what does the pattern look like? Like nutrition, my clients have heard me say this probably 1,000 times in the last week. And nutrition is about long-term averages. It's not about what you did one time.
Love that.
It's about what do you do day in, day out? What is the habit? What does the pattern look like? What is the long-term? It's not what did you do today or what did you do yesterday? And really what you did yesterday doesn't even matter because it's more about what you're going to do today and tomorrow. But how do you focus on the long-term and zoom out and say, look, like, even if you're going away for a week and, it's vacation and things get a little loose, like that's okay. 1 week. I just met with someone this morning, we were talking about it. I was like, it's okay. You're going to be away for a week with your kids. Like, yeah, enjoy it. Like you're going to be somewhere else. Like someone else is doing all the cooking. That sounds lovely. You don't have to worry about it. And so enjoy it. Like don't go so overboard, but let's enjoy the trip. And when you get back, let's figure out what we need to pick up on and where we need to get back to. And if you slip a little bit, that's okay. Like you can keep going. And that's the whole point is we're going to keep going. Yeah. So that's kind of the main focus is, I guess around parental mindset is a big part of it. When it's older kids, it's really, really individualized, especially as you start to get into things that may be bordering on eating disorders and things like that, where it may or may not be, me helping the family. I may refer out for higher level of care if they need like inpatient or something like that. Or, if it's something that actually seems like it's starting with the parents, because we often project a lot of our own things onto our kids, whether it's our own history with food, our own history with our weight, whatever it is. And sometimes we push, we don't want our kids to have the experience that we had growing up, so we push them so far the other way. And that could be, I grew up in a really restrictive household, so now it's, you have basically free reign to access anything. Or it could be, I grew up really overweight, so now I'm going to be really restrictive because I don't want that for my kid. And then what does your kid do when they go to a friend's house who has like the amazing pantry that has the doctor age, everything, I don't know if they make everything, but has all the foods that they never get access to. So, trying to figure out where the parents are, where the family is, and where do they want to get to, and let's figure out what that first step is that feels accessible for you.
Yeah, I love that. So many moms struggle to balance convenience with healthy eating. So what are some practical tips for busy parents to ensure that their family gets nutritious meals without spending hours in the kitchen? And I noticed on your website you have, I think it's the 5 meals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think the biggest thing is planning. It comes down to planning. So how, or prioritizing and planning. So how much of a priority is this? Do you want to cook for your family? Do you want to order dinner for your family? What do you want to do? And it doesn't have to be the same thing every day. Like you can access some local restaurants a couple times a week. Yeah, you've got a little flexibility. So if you're someone who really likes to plan, maybe you pick a couple nights a week where you do some batch cooking, and you sit down on, I don't know, Sunday night. It's the most common meal planning night of the week, but that doesn't work for everybody. I personally am like a Monday, Thursday type of meal planner. But some people really want to do it on Sunday night, and you can do it whatever night you want. You can also do it a couple times a week and sit down and actually map it out. Like, what does your week look like in terms of like if you're both working or you're a single parent and you're really overwhelmed and you're just trying to figure it out one day at a time, whatever the situation is, what does the week look like? Or what does the next 3 days look like? And if you're going to cook, like, where are you going to fit that in? Do you work from home when you have time during the day? That's a luxury. That sounds great. Do you work on site? Are you working goals on it? Whatever it is, you figure out where the time is that you can actually meal plan and cook. And then you prep it, basically do all the prep work in advance. So that way, when it comes time to cook, what can you do in those 20 or 30 minutes that you maybe have available? If budgetary concerns aren't super strong, so then maybe we're buying pre-cut things. Does it cost a little bit more to have someone else cut it? But it does save you some time. So you're buying back your time in that way. You can also buy frozen vegetables or frozen fruit, whatever you want to do there. And nutritionally, extraordinarily similar. In some cases, actually more nutritious than fresh. You may lose a little bit of texture, but depending on the application, it might not really matter. I buy like a 5-pound bag of frozen broccoli because it's pre-cut. It's broccoli, and I'm really lucky. My kids love steamed broccoli. I hazard of being a child of a dietitian. That's But that's like a huge time saver for me because I don't have to process all of the rest. And so, and it's 5 pounds. So it's like on a per serving basis, it's relatively low. So you can do things like that. When it comes to things like proteins or things that may take a little bit longer, thinking through what's like pretty plain way that I can cook this so that I can repurpose it in multiple different ways. So let's say you are going to roast a bunch of chicken breasts. That's great. Maybe you just do it with like little salt, little pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, something like a really simple rub. And you roast it. And then you can, the first night you serve it just kind of like as is with whatever sides you're serving it with. And then maybe you turn it into like a chicken salad for chicken salad sandwiches one day, or you repurpose it with like a different kind of sauce that you can mix it with like a pesto or something like that. And you serve it, as like a cold pasta salad or something. There's a million different ways you can do it, but it takes a little bit of planning up front. So that way you can sit down and say, okay, Sunday, I know I have time. So I'm going to shop on Sunday. Maybe you bring the kids to the grocery store. It's a great way to get them involved as well. And you're also don't have to find someone else to watch your kid. Or maybe do find someone else to watch your kids to get a little bit great, whatever your preference is. And, you plan it out and you shop with a list rather than just going to the store and be like, I'll just buy whatever looks good. That works for some people, but for 90% of people, having a list, going to the store and sticking to the list is not only the most efficient way to do it, but it's also the best way to stay aligned with your goals. You end up probably not going down some of the aisles that you don't want to go down, and you've done all the prep work. And so even if you do go down one aisle you didn't really want to go down, you're probably only going to get like one, right? Instead of being like, well, I'm going to get every type of Pepperidge Farm cookie that they make. So the Milanos and all the other ones. And that's probably not what you want to keep in your home, to have access to all the time, if that's not something that's aligned with your goals. So, doing the planning up front is enormously important because it can really, calm the waters down the road. And you find the time for it and you're able to prioritize it. If you don't like to plan, then it's having ideas at the ready. So I put together meal plans for people all the time that come with the shopping list. And so I do the planning. Or if you're more adept in the kitchen, then you have those kind of like, you figure out what are those like 10-ish go-to meals that you can make based on what you have in the pantry. I call them like my bailout meals. And it's basically like, I have 25 minutes or less to get dinner on the table for 5 people. What am I going to do? And I do a lot of like plant-based dishes for that because it's a lot less cooking, and I'll just do stuff with whatever kinds of beans I have in the pantry. Like I'm a big proponent of buy the canned beans with no salt added, rinse them and use them rather than spending all the time cooking your own. Like it's just not something I'm ever going to do personally. And figure out, what seasonings do you like? What seasonings do your kids like? And what can you do that's quick and easy, and just have that kind of at the ready. So that way when the time comes and you're like, I didn't plan, but I still need to eat. And I don't want to get more Uber Eats or DoorDash or whatever your flavor of delivery app is. So that way you have a plan in place and you have ideas that you can execute quickly, reliably, things that your kids actually will eat and enjoy.
I love that. I love that realization that there are people out there that love to plan. That's something that I definitely work with my clients too. They want to know what to do. They want to have the whole week planned out. And then you've got the people that just really, truly prefer to live by the seat of their pants. And so I assume you have like pantry staples, like the beans and stuff like that. Any other foods that come to mind that you just think every household should have in the refrigerator or the freezer or the pantry that just will make these, I think you called them bailout meals, or what that was?
Yeah. I mean, having like a wide variety of whole grains is great. So whole grains are super important. They have fiber in them. They have all of the minerals and nutrients that come in the grain. So they're, they don't necessarily last quite as long on the shelf, but I personally have never seen a bag of brown rice go bad. It lasts a very long time, right? So, we're talking brown rice rather than white rice, things that are made from whole wheat rather than white flour or white wheat flour, because again, it has the fiber, which is super, super, super important. Most people in this country don't get enough fiber, and it's really important. I mean, I think I've heard this on your show probably a million times, but really important for blood sugar control, really important for satiety or like feeling full from a meal, great for your gut health. So overall, just the more fiber, up to a certain point, the more fiber, kind of the better. So, keeping things like quinoa or lentils or millet, brown rice, bulgur wheat, things like that in your pantry, most of them will cook in under 20. Brown rice takes a little bit longer, but you can also get like frozen brown rice that you just throw in the microwave. And I've gotten that at Whole Foods, I've gotten that at Trader Joe's. Like, it's great in a pinch. Does it taste the same? Not quite, but it's fine. It's totally fine. And that's one of those times where like, that's a functional meal where you just kind of fight another day. Cause it's 5:30 and you want your kids to be in bed on time. So things like that are great. And for the most part, they can stay in the freezer, whatever frozen vegetables you like. So broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, whatever it is that you like, the mixes are great. I don't get the ones with the sauces. I'd rather like make my own sauce quickly or, buy something sauce wise that maybe doesn't necessarily come from like Bird's Eye or whatever other brand. So that's not really their jam. Like their jam is the vegetables, not the sauce. So I'd rather use it like a good store-bought sauce or make my own in a pinch. And then, sauces are great. Condiments are really, really great things that you and your family like and feel good about. What else food I keep on hand? I mean, I usually keep chicken in my freezer, like uncooked chicken. Unfortunately, I don't really like to freeze cooked chicken personally, but some people do. Lean proteins like that, like ground turkey is great also in a pinch, as long as you can defrost it quickly. So things like that are really, really great. Or, plant-based proteins like tofu, like you have to cook tofu. It probably will taste better if you do, but you don't have to. It's safe to eat right out of the, container. So things like that can be great in a pinch, that are kind of ready to go right away.
So I think the most common question I get, and I am sure you work with, are the picky eaters. And I watched on your Instagram, you made a snack for your children or your child that had I love the guacamole. It had the snap peas and it had the chips as well. And maybe love that tape on it. But how do you combat, even just say that a family the child has had a ton of processed food, ultra processed food for a very long time. And now they're trying to wean them into, more whole foods. Where do you start? Because I know kids can be very stout about not wanting to eat anything that's healthy or, it doesn't come in a package or have a cartoon character on it. It can be very tough.
Yeah, there's lots and lots of different ways to do it. It kind of depends on where the parents are in the pickiness journey, if you will, for lack of a better term. Sometimes the first step is, okay, my kid will only eat tortilla chips, right? Okay. It's probably not the only thing they're going to eat, but I hear that a lot. Can we get them to eat a different color tortilla chip? They'll chip. This one's made from blue corn instead of yellow corn. Are they willing to do it? And we test it out, right? Like it's still a chip. You can see it come out of the bag. Tastes a little bit different. Probably can't tell the difference though. Maybe they can. But will they try it? And so we see what is like the adjacency that we can go after. So is it the color? Is it the texture? Is it the flavor? Is it the exact same product? Maybe just a different brand in some really extreme case. That's kind of the step that we're going to take. We're going to go from like Tostitos to like Tapiti or something like that. Like another brand of chip. And so, maybe that's the step that we have to take is to go like that. Or maybe your kid is like, I will only eat red things. Great. There's so many things out there that are red. We can eat tomatoes. We can eat peppers. We can eat beets. They're kind of purple. They're kind of red. Maybe they're both. There are so many things out there that are red that we can try. Maybe they'll only eat red apples. Okay, fine. Let's see if we can try a different kind of red apple. So not this red delicious. Now we're moving into Gale or moving into like pink lady or, you walk into Whole Foods, there's 1,000 apple varieties. We live in New York, so it's like a ton of apples all the time. So, we look for those different types of adjacencies that we can look at. Or we say, okay, kid only really wants to eat chips. Chips are a great vehicle for dip. So what is a dip that they are willing to try? Most of the time, the first dip they're willing to try is queso. Cheese is a really familiar food. Tastes great. Great source of fat, and our kids need fat for their brains. And depending on how you make it, can be a great source of calcium as well. So queso gets a bad rap sometimes, but I think it's kind of unwarranted. If it's the only thing your kid's eating, maybe that's a different story. But maybe that's the first step. And then from there, we can start to think a little bit more about, okay, like maybe we can try like a really, really, really smooth pulley, or just like smashed up avocado that maybe has like some cheese on top of it, like some shredded cheese or something like that. Like finding those ways to make the step as small as possible, or really actually as big as possible, that's still acceptable. So it's usually a pretty small step the first couple times. As kids start to try different things, they're going to have more and more opinions, and that's good, right? We want them to have opinions, kind of like what I was saying before. And they'll like, what they like and what they don't like, depending on how old they are, and be so nice. But they'll start to form their opinions about foods, and they can really communicate it. It's a journey for them. It's a long-term approach. It's not, my kid's so picky and they'll never do this. Well, not with that attitude, right? And your kids still need to eat every single day. So most important thing is getting them fed. It's like, that's top of the list, right? But beyond that, if we can expand their palate just a little bit, right? Like if we can try one new food in a week, maybe that's success, right? For some families, that is success. For other families, it's one new food a day or 2 new foods a day, or even just tolerating something else being on the plate is success sometimes. So it really depends where a family is. But looking for those like linkages between where they are now and what could be like small expansion of the acceptable food universe for your child. That's kind of the name of the game. And then you slowly start to expand the acceptable foods. Or you say, look, like we thought red was the thing we could optimize on. And turns out there's no flexibility there whatsoever. And so maybe now we're moving in a different direction, and it's okay. Like and then maybe, by the way, a year from now, you try it again and it works, because nothing is forever the same, for better and for worse.
We're changing. So real fast, do you find, or do you incorporate like the children helping like a grocery list or go to the store or help with the actual cooking, that getting all that process helps with their palate as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's one of the best ways. So I said focus so much on the individual foods. Bigger things than even that are, to your point, Melissa, taking your kids into the planning process. So figuring out what you're going to serve and asking them like, well, what do you want to have? Maybe not what do you want to have for dinner, because that's still a little bit too open-ended, but offering them like an A or B choice, right? So we're going to make chicken tonight. Do you want it with pasta or rice? Right? Do you want it with carrots or whatever it is? Like, offer 2 things that you know your kids like. And those can be great ways to offer more choice for your kids and more agency for them, but also bringing them to the grocery store and letting them see what goes into like shopping and picking out foods. Also, like one of the grocery stores I go to has a lobster tank, and I call it the aquarium. Like, oh, who wants to go to the aquarium with Dad today? My kids are 5 and 3, so they kind of think it might be the aquarium stuff. And so, but you can make it fun in lots and lots of different ways. And then they see all the different colors. One of my kids is obsessed with the color green, which for food, fantastic. But we walk by the vegetable section. He's like, green. I'm like, super. Yes, everything's green here. It's okay. But you can bring them into that process, and then, they'll see something and you can say, hey, go pick out something in this fair, right? And so maybe you send them to like the citrus section and they can pick out like clementines or blood oranges or regular oranges, or maybe they come back with like a grapefruit and you're like, great, let's see what this tastes like. You can find different things that might be a little bit new and different. Like the dragon fruit looks really cool on the outside, and I personally don't love the taste, but my kids really like dragons, so they'll eat dragon fruit. And you can do things like that where you find foods that look really, really fun, assuming you have access to them. Or, if you're ordering your groceries online, like maybe bring them into the process of using Instacart or Amazon Fresh or whatever you use. But also then sitting down with your kids at mealtime is probably the single most important thing, which probably should have led with that, but that's it. So sitting down with your kids at mealtime, modeling the behavior that you want to see from them without talking about like, I'm now modeling for you how to eat like a wide variety diet. But they're watching you and they're seeing the things that you're doing. So if you're eating a varied diet that's rich in primarily plant foods, that's probably what they're going to do down the road as well. And they're going to have seen it all their lives. And you're just not going to put any pressure on them about it. You're not going to really talk about it. It's just kind of one of those things. And naturally, the top of the food's going to come up at the table. And you can say, oh, Mama is really enjoying her soup. We always talk in the third person. Mama is really enjoying her sweet potatoes today. They're really cool. Look, these ones are orange. Maybe another time we can get white ones or purple ones or red ones or, whatever. Potatoes come in every color, I feel like. But, you can have that kind of conversation rather than, did you eat your sweet potatoes? Did you eat your peas? Like, that's a lot of pressure. If that was not at the table and it was any other aspect of life, you'd be like, are you pestering your kids? Right. But for some reason at the table, it feels like it's okay. I'd argue that it's not really okay. You're better off taking the pressure off and just kind of making it as easy an environment as possible. And when the pressure comes off, the meal gets a lot easier for both the parents and the kids.
That's profound. And it's so true. I mean, my mom wasn't too bad, but my husband always shared the story of how he would literally sit for hours because of the boiled Brussels sprouts that his mom, he couldn't get off the table until he still wants to.
To be fair, for decades, I feel like we mishandled our Brussels sprouts. Like they are meant to be treated with high heat and be caramelized and roasted, like seared, some type of flavor building. Boiling them is like I get it. Sitting at the table part, not a fan of, but also boiled Brussels sprouts, not doing you any favors, Mom.
No, yeah, I ate it up until my adult life when I, went to a nice restaurant that actually, of course, it's got bacon and it's just covered in all the good stuff. But I was like, this is the Brussels sprout? Oh my gosh. So yeah, I think every parent starts off by boiling them, not knowing any better. I would love to talk to you if you can share a couple of examples of misinformation that's out there. The World Wide Web is wonderful. And now we've got, AI coming out, which is pretty darn crazy accurate, but not perfect either.
Mm-hmm.
In your career, the misinformation that parents have come to you with that you have to work with them to help change that mindset or, their idea of how that's supposed to be.
So I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about fat currently, fat as a nutrient. So, we were talking earlier about, the fat-free craze of the 90s. And then last few years, there's been like the keto craze as well. Yeah. And the truth of the matter is fat's really important. We need it in our diet. We certainly don't need it to be 90% of our diet, but we also don't need it to be zero. The truth is kind of in that like 20 to 30 or 10 to 35% of our diet by calorie range. It's kind of tends to be like a healthy spot for it. And I have parents even come to me and say, like, I felt a lot better when I went on the keto diet. Like, I want to put my kid on the keto diet. And I usually ask two questions. My first one is, so when did your kid get diagnosed with epilepsy? Because that's truly the only clinically indicated use for a ketogenic diet. And the other question is, what were you eating before you started eating keto? Because the big change that happens, so there's two changes that happen when you go to keto diet. One is you lose a bunch of water weight because you deplete a lot of the glycogen stores, and that releases a lot of water. And so you can lose like 10 pounds and you think you feel great because you 10 pounds, but you just lost 10 pounds of water, effectively. The other thing that happens is you weren't paying attention to what you were eating, and now you are. And so you went from eating a diet that was you're really rich in all these processed foods or convenience foods or whatever the case may be, to now, like, yes, you're eating a higher fat diet. By the way, you're probably in a state of ketosis. You're probably eating like modified Atkins diet. So keto diets are really hard to achieve, a true keto diet. Okay, now your fat sources are things like olive oil and avocado rather than, all the fried foods you're eating before. And so, of course, you're feeling because you made this change and you're eating non-starchy vegetables, which, by the way, are things like zucchini, asparagus, broccoli, cauliflower, spinach, kale, like all of these things that I would love for you to eat anyway. But not just because they're on a keto diet, but because they are some of our best sources of nutrients. They're just overall really, really well-rounded foods, great sources of fiber. The list goes on. So, of course, you feel better. You're eating overall like a healthier diet. But now we're eating way too much fat and probably too many calories still. And yes, you've lost some weight. Maybe it's the water. Maybe you've lost a little bit of fat as well. But maybe you're not eating enough protein. You're probably not if you're eating that much fat. And so what's happening to your muscle mass? Like, you're probably losing some lean mass also. And do you really want that for your kid? And so I've got to talk a lot of parents out of putting their kids on ketogenic diets because they really get caught up in it and they're like, I think this is the best thing for my kid. Like maybe a doctor says something about it also. And I would love to talk to their doctor, and sometimes I do. And the doctor and I have a really fruitful conversation around like what actually is a keto diet and what is indicated, and like why are you suggesting this? And here's why I don't in this. And so that's one major piece is around that. Similarly, around carbs, I get a lot of questions about macros. And so around carbs, a lot of people, think that carbs are the enemy, partially because of the keto craze, but also because they were raised to think that carbs are the enemy. And it's true. If you eat too many carbohydrates, that's not great for you in many, many ways. But that's usually just the function of you ate too much, full stop. And it's really easy to overdo it on refined carbs and processed foods. Like processed foods are engineered to be hyperpalatable, and meaning like they are redoing the designs all the time, the chemistry behind the foods to make them taste just a little bit better, be stripped of a little bit more nutrition, and enhanced in ways that make you want to come back for more and more and more. It sounds like addiction. It's very simple because it's feeding into that, and it's cheap, it's easily accessible, and it's really, really harmful when that's like there's an over reliance on paper processed foods like that. So when we're able to pull away from that and say, okay, instead of eating the ultra processed foods, we're going to eat whole grains. We'll have bread. We'll have or Ezekiel bread or whatever it is. We'll have oatmeal for breakfast. Like, gets a bad rap, but oatmeal is awesome. It's a great canvas for pretty much anything. When we start doing things like that, that's when you'll start to feel a lot better. You'll start to have an appropriate amount of, our body should be having like 50-ish% of our calories from carbohydrates every, like somewhere between 45 and 65, call it 50, make it nice and round. And that's a really great place to be if we're figuring out, I'm not suggesting that most people go out and figure out how many calories they should have every day. But if we're eating, whole grains as our source, or legumes or lentils, things like that are also going to give us a good dose of fiber, like carbs are really, really great for us. They're our primary source of energy. Our brain wants carbs so badly. It's all it wants. It doesn't want to run on ketones. It wants to run on carbs. So that's kind of, the two biggest things that people come to me with is just questions around like, am I eating too many carbs? Or should I be eating like 15 grams of carbs or less every day? And I'm like, no, that's very scary. That's not enough. So yeah, so you focus a lot on.
So, very true. The, keto equaling very low carbohydrate. And right now, the golden child is protein, because parents will hear, my child eats protein. It's growing. Should we focus more on a carnivore diet? Are you getting that a lot more now? Because everybody thinks, I tell all my clients and my followers this all the time, we take a good thing, we just blow it out of proportion. So protein's good for you. So then we start the carnivore diet. Your healthy fats are good for you. So then we do the keto diet, and then we, plants are good for you. So then people go full vegan. It's so difficult to teach people balance and moderation in all things. But I would assume right now that parents, because I have clients that come to me, asking about the carnivore diet, that they're putting that on their kids as well. Maybe you can just express the importance of the fruits and the vegetables.
Yeah. So I think when we think about balance, there's something called the plate method, which is different from my plate. So the plate method was originally designed to help folks with diabetes in terms of like visually balancing out their plate. And so the way it goes is you divide your plate into quadrants and you say, okay, in my top left quadrant is going to be my protein. And that can be any lean protein you want. So chicken, fish, tofu, lean cuts of beef, things like that. Top right corner will be your starch. And we really want that to be a whole grain most of the time, or a starchy vegetable like a potato or a sweet potato, corn or peas. And then the bottom half is non-starchy vegetables. So that is basically any vegetable you can think of that's not potatoes, sweet potatoes, corn, and peas. Salad, like any type of salad green or sauteed green, kale, Swiss chard, arugula, spinach, anything like that. But also things like tomatoes, which are technically a fruit, but cucumbers, peppers, asparagus, broccoli, cauliflower, eggplant, whatever you want it to be as your non-starchy vegetable. And that's your plate, right? So you've got a quarter that's protein, a quarter that's starch, and half that's non-starchy vegetables. And if you can visually do that on your plate, what you're saying to yourself is, I'm prioritizing vegetables because I know that those are the richest source of micronutrients in our diet on a per calorie basis, per volume unit basis, per weight basis. Any basis that you want to look at, they are so rich in nutrients that our bodies need, whether it's the ones that we measure on the food label or the ones that we don't. So when I say that, I mean like the phytonutrients and all the antioxidant compounds that are found in plants that we don't necessarily measure, but we know are. So things like lycopene or beta carotene, things like that are really, really great for our bodies, fight inflammation throughout the body, do all these amazing things. We're also getting fiber from those vegetables, and we're getting fiber from that starch, and we're getting our carbs through the starch, and then we're getting protein from our protein sources. That's a great starting point for your food. And the cool thing is you can actually do it with your hands, right? So you can say, okay, my hands, like these are basically the same size. And so I can hold my hands and my plate should be the size of my hands because everyone's hands are different sizes and everyone's needs are different sizes. So you can say, okay, the 4 fingers, like my index through my pinky finger on my left hand, that's going to be the size of my protein, right? And on my right hand, those same 4 fingers, that's going to be the size of my starch. And you could use your palms instead of your fingers if you wanted to. And then in the example I'm using, I would say, okay, my 2 palms, that's going to be my non-starchy vegetables.
Yeah.
And that's how much I need. And my hands are different size than your hands, and my needs are a different size than your needs. By the way, your kids' hands are a different size than your hands, and their needs are different size than your needs. And kids love using their hands. So it really is a visually appealing way to divide things. Works great for when there's 3 components of a meal. A little harder for like a mixed meal, like a chili or something like that. But, if we're saying, 80-ish% of the time you're able to do this, something like that, it's a great place to be.
Yeah. So Jake, so we ask you though, because you tell me where you would fit in or talk to people about, you've got carbohydrates, you've got, your greens and those very fibrous carbohydrates in your food. Where, because you say lean proteins, where you just fitting the fat in with the vegetables, like putting butter on it, cooking in olive oil.
Yeah, so you can fit fats in lots and lots of different places. So you can use olive oil or avocado oil or whatever plant-based oil of your choice in your cooking. So fat adds flavor, right? So if we're making chicken or fish or something like that, like I will almost always add oil to it so that it tastes better before I add seasoning to it. Same thing with vegetables. If you want to work in some avocado or guacamole or something like that, fit that in there as well. You can chop up nuts and put them on top of like whatever vegetable or something. If you do like almonds with string beans or something like that, you could do like a nut crusted chicken, something like there's a lot of different ways you can do it. But the main focus is truly getting the protein, the starch, and the vegetables in there. And look, there's going to be some fat in your protein source, unless you're eating just protein powder, and even that has some fat in it. But for the most part, there's going to be some fat that comes along with your protein. But finding, you can use it in your cooking applications, and that's a great way to fit it in as well. If you're having a salad, use a salad dressing that actually has oil in it, so that you can unlock the fat soluble vitamins that are in some of your foods. So that way you're getting your vitamin A, D, E, and K, which you need. Like we all need vitamin D. We all need vitamin A. We all need vitamin. And so making sure that there's a fat source at the meal is really important as well. Okay. It sounds like there's a lot there, like a lot of pieces to keep track of. But if you just looked at your plate and you're like, there's some protein there, and it's taking up like a quarter of my plate. There's some starch there, it's taking up like a quarter of my plate. The rest of my plate is like basically just vegetables. Like you're in a good place. It's a really great place to be.
Totally agree. And it's so simple. And you can do that with when you eat. Do that at a buffet. You can do that at home. You can, you can look at a menu and say, okay, you're visualizing your, the 4 quadrants or the 3 types of food that you're having. I think that's very simple. I have one, I think probably the most important question. My last question, Jason, because this is literally this last weekend, it was broad. I mean, I talked to probably 28 women last weekend. Loved it. But this resonated with a lot of them, is moms looking to lose weight. And they want to know what are some strategies to help them achieve their goals without feeling deprived or compromising their family's nutrition. They always tell me they're busy and they don't want to make 2 different things, and they don't, for some reason, I guess, feel like their kids can't eat what they're eating, or that their kids won't eat what they're eating and they can't eat what their kids are eating. How do you navigate the mom that is on a weight loss journey, that has small kids, that could be picky eaters, that, don't really want to eat the really healthy stuff that's doable for both of them, that they both feel like they're winning?
So the dirty secret of the weight loss industry is that, maybe not the only dirty secret, but a dirty secret of the weight loss is that a diet for losing weight is pretty much just a generally healthy diet that you can eat for the long run. Like there's not a special weight loss diet. The diet of a diet that's rich in whole grains, fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, and healthy fats, that is the diet that's going to help you as a mom who wants to lose weight, lose the weight. And also it's probably the diet that you want to feed your kids. So bridging the gap between the two, it depends what the gaps are, right? It depends where you are right now and where your kids are. There's no switch you can flip that's going to say, okay, everyone's eating the exact same thing going forward, if you're not already eating similar foods. So if you're already in the camp of we're making 2 different things because my kids eat very differently than me, well, how did you get there? Take a step back. How long has that been going on for? Are your kids teenagers now? And for the last 13, 14 years, they've been eating differently from you? that's going to be a really hard gap to bridge right away. You can do it over time, but you've got to be willing to put the time in to say, look, like, we got to make some changes, and I'm going to try to meet you guys halfway, or meet you halfway, whoever the other party is. But you can't just flip the switch and expect your kids to come along for the ride with you, because they're going to push back, because they're people and they have free will, and they should push back on that, because that's a big change. So bringing them into it and saying, look, like, mommy wants to lose weight because she feels like she can't keep up with you anymore, or something like that, where it's not about appearance. It's not about anything that could possibly damage your kid's mental health down the road. Look, it already might, and that's a hard conversation to have. But you got to make it, you got to be upfront with them sometimes if they're old enough. And if they're not, you can say, I want to eat these foods because it makes me feel good, because it gives me energy, because it helps me feel strong. However you want to talk about it, so that it's not just about weight loss, that's probably the way to go about it. And then you can start to talk about the foods that you're eating, or like, you want to try them? They're really yummy. Yeah. And like, at least with little kids, food always tastes better off their parents' plate. Even I can see that. So, that can be one way to kind of start that journey. But, if your kids are older, it's a conversation. And depending on how old they are and where they are with respect to their relationship with food, that's going to dictate the type of conversation. It's really hard to give generalizable advice around that, because every situation is so different. But again, like, I applaud the moms and the dads who are, trying to prioritize their health, because they're saying, look, like, I want to feel better, because I want to be there for the long run. I don't just want to be there, next week. I want to be there in 20 years. I want to be there in 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is, so that when my young child is my age and has kids of their own, I can chase my grandkids around, and I'm not going to be the person who's, driving around an oxygen tank or shooting an insulin pump or whatever the case may be for as long as I can. So you're taking care of yourself. You're making that long-term investment. Like, it really is, a really, really big step to take, especially as an adult. It's so much harder as an adult than it is as a kid. And I give people a lot of credit for taking that step and finding the support that they need, whether it's through your coaching or, however they're finding support, finding the group that they need, the people that they need that are in their corner and cheering them on. It makes a world of difference, and having your family in your corner can really be in some ways.
Yeah, I love that, because we started with you talking about the tremendous amount of confidence that you gained being your health, as a priority as a young man, and then now, parents doing the same thing for not only their own confidence and to keep up with their kids, but for what happens 20, 30 years down the road, wanting to make sure that their kids aren't taking care of them, that they're able to take care of themselves. I think this has been chock full of information, but it hits home that it's a family event, and there's ways around it. And I think you must be a tremendous husband and dad, and of course, dietitian to work with, because I can just feel you have a huge amount of empathy, and you've got an underlining level of tough love, but you deliver it in a very kind and patient way, which I think is fantastic, because I think it takes all of that. And these are such sensitive subjects, and you don't want parents to feel like they're failing, and you don't want kids, to grow up with unhealthy relationships with food, or even just mad at their parents because all their kids have the Gatorades and probably the Monster energy drinks in their lunchbox, and these sugary fruit snacks that don't have any fruit in them and stuff, and the child is upset. But having you as a liaison and being able to help navigate the parent in such a way that it shows love for that child, I think is needed. So, I personally think you are in a great field, and one that needs to be out there, put more in, and it sounds like you do a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It truly is, like you said, that's like the best part of the day is having those breakthroughs with families and seeing things change for the better over the long. It makes my day better every day.
Well, I bet. So tell me real fast, so you've got the 5-year-old boy, and then you've got a 3.5 twin son and daughter. What are their favorite
foods? Oh boy, great question. It's very variable. My daughter is a peanut butter and banana fanatic. Like any time of day, she'd be like, I'd be like, Maddie, like, I'm gonna make sandwiches for lunch for tomorrow. She's like, I don't want the bread. I just peanut butter, but all the time. She loves it. Cooper's favorite food, he's the one who loves green. So pretty much anything green. He's been on a big honeydew kick lately. Also loves like any type of green ice cream. We were at a minor league baseball game yesterday, and all he wanted was mint chocolate chip ice cream. They had Dippin' Dots there, so he had that. Those green. I was like, do you even like mint? He's like, I actually don't like the way it tastes, but I like the color. He just so funny. And then Spencer, my older son, her favorite food. He is like the most adventurous eater I know, and has been since birth. He will eat pretty much anything I put in front of him, but he really loves hummus. It's like one of his favorite things. I'll put it on just about anything. So yeah, so they eat a wide variety of things. Sometimes they agree on things, sometimes they don't, but that's okay. They're 3 little kids.
Right. Absolutely. You said, I love that you just kept reiterating that they should have an opinion. They should be able to tell you how they feel, what they like, what they don't like. That's very powerful. Can you share with the audience where they could find you, and if they want to look into working with you, how they would go about doing so?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. So my Instagram is at wholefamilyhealth.co, and my website is also wholefamilyhealth.co. I post pretty infrequently on Instagram, but I'm starting to get more into it. And so follow me there and check out my website. You can apply to work with me on there as well. See pictures of my kids, all that good stuff. Yeah, I need to update them. They're like a year old at this point. So they look really little there. And now I look at them and I'm like, you guys are giants. Stop growing, but also keep growing. Yeah.
At age, it's so hard to keep current photos because they look different. 2 months down the road, you're like, that was so old, but it was like 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Really appreciate the time. This was super helpful. And like I told you before we hit record, that I do have like almost 28 and 30-year-old, and there's going to come a time, I hope that that eventually you come into the picture. And I genuinely took a lot of things to heart and note, because grandmas always tend to spoil just a little bit more, but at the same time, nutrition is my life and I want them to be healthy. And so some tips that you told me, I really wish I knew 25 years ago, but I do know now, and I will absolutely implement them. So I thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity to chat today. I loved it. It was so much fun.
So you guys, as always, and especially with Jason's advice, I want you to wake up feeling prepared, and I want you to go to bed feeling proud. Have a great day.
Wow, we've reached the end. But before we leave you, we'd love to hear from you. After all, it's not every day that someone reaches out and asks for your opinion. And to us, your opinion does matter.
Now, the content in this episode is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.
Share this episode with anyone you think needs to hear this message. And please remember to do your part of the bargain by rating, reviewing, and subscribing wherever you listen to the Made Fitz show.
We are Melissa and Dr. Fitz, and until next time, thank you for your time, support, and action you take in your own health journey. You get one life. Let's live it abundantly together.